Hello, it's Zoe. My question for you this week is, do you have some assumptions that need challenging? Most likely, yes. Let's find out. On Planet Human, there's an interesting new software out. It's not often that I say software and get excited about it, but this one is called Regen. And it's about how to build regenerative societies, communities that are self-sufficient, environmentally sustainable, socially and ecologically or economically, all the ecos resilient. Yeah, so how to do that? So how to turn these eco villages into reality? The software does all the modeling. So you give the inputs of where you want to run this village and what are the factors that you need to take into account as you build this thing. Now, why do I care about this? First of all, I care about self-sustaining ecosystems, I think, and social ecosystems. I think that is a future that we need to really invest in and to think strategically about when we are building things together as we do as humans. But I'm also interested because of Mars. Yeah. So the research I'm doing for my next book, my next fiction book, which is called Olympus Dawn, is set on Mars. And I've been doing some research about what do you actually need in order to have a self-sustaining community out there? And the answer is a lot. So this software could help. I wonder what it would come up with if you plugged Mars into it and scoped it out. Would love to find out. So that's it on Planet Human. On Planet Zoe, I have 1 week to go before I am out on the Australian Alpine walking track where I've been training for the last 10 weeks, explicitly carrying my backpack up and down around the village. I was stuck in village, around the streets of my neighborhood, climbing as many hills as I possibly can to get ready for this epic adventure. I will be sure to share pictures as I come into contact with the internet when I'm out there. I'm not expecting too much internet, but anyway, I'll be posting pictures on my Instagram account as well as my Facebook account as we go, and certainly afterwards. So that's what's happening there. I've also been writing power games. No, I haven't finished writing power games. I've been writing all the assets and publicity pieces for it, as well as the supporting materials and workshops for power games, launching very soon. Basically, when I come back from the Australian Alpine walking track, we are getting set and ready to press go on the Kickstarter campaign in May. If you haven't signed up for it for advance notice, make sure you do that. The link is in the show notes there, or you can go to my website, zoerouth.com, click on books and power games, and you get your name in the communications to get advance notice of when the book is coming. Hurrah! And I've been writing Olympus Dawn. That's the book I have been writing. So I've been plugging away at my last novel in the Gaia Enterprises series. Very excited about what's going to happen to these people. It is moving from dystopia to utopia. I'm not sure that's a spoiler. No, there's plenty of dystopian things that do happen in the book. But the idea is that there is a hopeful finish to the series. That's my objective anyway. So that's what's happening on Planet Zoe. What if we could bring the world to the workplace? How might we expand people's sense and understanding of the other, of each other, and therefore build a more inclusive, engaged, tolerant, accepting, productive community at work? Yes, sounds good. So how do we go about doing that? Well, my guest today talks explicitly how he thinks we should do it in the absence of a large ship where you can put people and send them on this extraordinary experience, which is amazing. I can't wait for you to listen in and hear how Scott Marshall does that. This is what you can do if you don't have the time or the money. You can start a books and business book club and have books, fiction books by authors from around the world. It's amazing the kind of different insights you can get from literature that is written by people not in your cultural norm. It's amazing. So you could do that. That's an easy, low cost, no cost thing. And you could also do a ChatGPT research piece where you could get it to ask it questions. How do people do governance in their organizations in Africa, in different countries in Africa? So you could ask it to do a piece of research around that. Or you ask it something like that. You can ask it for world histories of a particular nation like the Congo, say, for example, or Japan. That way you can get little bite-sized pieces to help broaden your horizons. It's not immersive, but it's a start. And the third one, if you want to take it up a level, is get your people to do field research. Have them pick a country, find a restaurant that has that food and go there and interview the people who run the restaurant, if they are indeed from that country, what life is like there, what drove them to come to your country, wherever you're living, and what are the changes and different things that they have seen in their experience. It's amazing what people coming from outside of a culture can see in a culture when they arrive. Enlightening. So those are 3 things that you can do to bring the world to the world of work. It's tea time in the office kitchen, and we have the amazing Scott Marshall here. He is the host of the podcast As Unexpected. He is the president and CEO of the Institute for Shipboard Education, which runs a nonprofit that directs Semester at Sea, which is spending a semester of your college degree, or as a later learning adult, a semester of your life on a ship going to different countries. Very exciting. Before that, he was professor of management, vice provost, and interim dean at Portland State University. So without further ado, here is Scott. All the way from Fort Collins, Colorado. Welcome to the show, Scott Marshall.
Zoe, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you today.
Yes, it's very exciting. And when I first saw the brief about Semester at Sea, I'm like, wow, that sounds like an amazing program. I'm big into experiential education and adventure, and those things combined as an opportunity for young people sounds amazing. But for those of us who are not that familiar with Semester at Sea, what is it?
Love talking about it. So it is a program that's been around over 60 years.
60?
Yes, it was founded in 1963.
Wow, okay.
Yes,
amazing.
It was originally called World Class Afloat. Then in 1975, the name changed to Semester at Sea, but the essence of the program has been around since 1963.
Wow.
And in very simple terms, our goal is international comparative experiential education. International comparative.
What does the comparative piece mean?
Comparative. So we are a study abroad program for college students. And instead of going to a single country to immerse, we take students to multiple countries by a ship. So
Yeah.
Semester at Sea. So for example, we have the spring voyage underway now, Semester at Sea voyage. Those college students, 536 of them, they registered for 12 to 15 college credits before boarding. They got on the ship in Bangkok. On January 5th, they started to get into their classes. 5 days later, they arrived in Ho Chi Minh City.
Mm-hmm.
They spent 5 days there learning, experiencing, and then they got back in the ship, started again with their courses with their faculty members, and sailed to Penang, Malaysia, spent 5 days there, experiencing, learning. They're on then they got on the ship again, and they sailed to Cochin, India.
Wow.
And they're currently in India. When they're done in India, they'll go to Mombasa, Kenya, Cape Town, South Africa, Accra, Ghana, Casablanca, Morocco, La Corona, Spain, and they'll end their semester voyage in Bremerhaven, Germany. So this is a fundamentally different type of study abroad. They're taking a full semester worth of courses. Those courses are accredited courses offered by Colorado State University. We are a separate nonprofit that runs the program. So these students can continue in their degree pursuit while having this incredible life-changing experience by seeing the world through so many different lenses.
Logistically, how does that work? Do they do classes on the ship as they're traveling?
They do. Yes, we have classrooms on the ship, and we have faculty that we've hired from institutions all over the US and some international faculty as well.
Yeah.
They're teaching those courses. And so students are taking 4 or maybe 5, in some cases, courses while they're on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Every course that's taught has a 1-day field class in one country over the course of the voyage. So that experiential piece is embedded into each course. It could be visiting local entrepreneurs in Kenya. It could be going to art museums in Malaysia. It could be visiting temples in Ho Chi Minh, depending on the course,
Right.
And depending on the faculty member.
So how does this not turn into one big frat party? That's what I'm also curious about. Cruises are notorious for being party boats.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So first of all, we intentionally call it a voyage, not a cruise,
Uh-huh.
because this is not actually anything like a cruise, except that it uses a cruise type ship. The first thing I'd say, they're college students, so they're
Yeah.
going to bring some of that mentality. But on the ship, drinking is very strictly limited and monitored, so that opportunity is simply not there. Students cannot bring alcohol on board. It's only provisioned by us. They pay for it, and they can only have 2 drinks during the time allotted, and it's chaperoned. So it's
Okay.
simply not a party ship. It's an
Got it.
academic. Now, to your question though, at times, some of those young adults will get off the ship into a country and decide that the way they want to experience that culture is at the local disco. So it does happen. Uh, but on the other hand, there's also students who reject that as how they want to experience their voyage and just have amazing immersive experiences over these 5 or 6 days in each country. So
My next question is, how much does this cost an individual?
yeah. So we do have a ship and it's got inside and outside cabins, right? So we do price tuition, room, and board together according to cabin. So we can't separate tuition, room, and board because you're basically buying that cabin with meals provided
Yeah.
and the cabin provided and the courses provided. So for in US dollars, for an inside cabin, it's about $33,000.
Mm.
And for outside is about $36,000 for a
Yeah.
semester. So I don't know what, Australian tuition is, tuition room and board is. Depending on the institution you're at in the US, this is if you're what we would call an in-state student in Colorado going to an institution here,
Hmm.
that would be expensive.
Yeah.
If you're an out-of-state student going to a university, it's not that expensive. And if you're going to a private institution, it's not that expensive. As you know,
Yeah.
US higher ed is priced with a huge band.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a big chunk of change, regardless of whether you're going to a private uni or a public one. Um, how does that, is it accessible do you offer scholarships, or how do people get access to this
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah, we
opportunity?
offer about $2 million of scholarships. Some of that's donor funded and some of it's basically merit that we offer as a nonprofit. Um, so I stated the market price, so you go on our website and you can see.
Yeah.
Uh, but the effective price, that is the average net price someone pays is around 24 because there's a lot of scholarship and aid. About half of
Yeah.
our students are full pay students and about half are on some kind of scholarship or aid.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So amazing experience, got a price tag attached to it. The development opportunity is massive. What has the research shown over the last 60 years that is the benefit to the individuals who end up going on this amazing voyage?
Yeah, there's so many ways to answer that question, I think. I can talk just about literally hundreds of testimonials from our alums, from people who sailed in the 60s to people who just recently sailed. And time again, I will hear, and we hear, that was the best 3.5 months of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most impactful experience in my college career. So testimonials are there. That's number one. Number two, I would say we do a net promoter score after every voyage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm sure you're familiar with the net promoter score. So we look at that repeatedly. And we're always in the 70 to 85% range. So,
Very
our
strong.
reference rate is very high. In fact, word of mouth is our most powerful tool for recruiting students because people who do it are huge advocates. And then, more scientifically, we actually measure our own learning outcomes. We call our voyage learning outcomes each voyage. And really, they go into a personal journey, like, looking at someone's own personal change that they've seen. So it's self-report, but it's measuring that. Second is their perspective on community.
Mm.
Uh, Third is perspective on planet. So their understanding of the world and the earth. And then fourth is the impact on their view of learning forever. Like lifelong learning would be the term, but to what degree is this just built this sense of a deep curiosity and commitment to learning? So we measure those every voyage, pre and post, and again, self-report in that they're marketed themselves. But again, we've particularly seen the first one, personal change, their self-report of that personal change, quite, if you use a t-test and look at the difference, it's quite significant.
Yeah.
And the third one, where their sense of the world has really changed. The other two see a difference, but imagine being on a ship and going to 3 continents over 3.5 months, 10 countries. Your sense of the world, your understanding of the world, just profoundly changes. And we've seen this repeatedly.
Let's drill into that, because that's the piece that I'm really most interested in. You take American. This is a presumption, I could be wrong. They're American college students. Do you have any other people from other nations joining the voyage?
Yeah, about 85 to 88% are US, and then another, 12 to 15% are international students.
Okay. So predominantly Americans, young Americans. What kinds of changes are they making when they're looking at how do you perceive community and how do you perceive planet? What are the things that they're reporting on in terms of how do they see things differently?
Yeah. So, I've had the chance again to listen to a number of your podcasts, and one that comes to mind with your question is, I can't remember the person's name, but they were really talking about, curiosity. What is curiosity? And it wasn't too long ago that you had this guest on, and what
they learn it all.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. And curiosity is that sense of sort of an enduring willingness to be changed by what you read and hear and listen to and so forth, and pushing yourself into a bit of discomfort, because curiosity does naturally push you into an area that you don't understand. You're willing to put yourself in a position of things where you don't understand, whether it's a culture, a country, an economy, just another human being. And no question that this program infuses that sense of curiosity in people that they didn't even know they had, and elevates to an extent that becomes transformational for their life. Again, I've talked to alums that sailed many, many years ago, and they just have this real enduring sense of curiosity, willing to push themselves in that zone of that learning edge, that sense of discomfort, so that they're willing to explore. Maybe there's a different view, maybe there's a different understanding, and what does that mean? And I think that's deeply powerful, and it's certainly something that can happen when someone goes in a single destination for a semester. But I also, because I work here, have a bias saying, actually, if you see multiple environments, if you have 5 or 6 days and you continue to be exposed and test and retest your own mental model, it's going to inspire this sense of curiosity that's quite powerful.
I love that, what you just said there, test and retest your own mental models. And that's really what we're after as educators, is to get people to challenge your own worldview, to see, this is just, you come with a set of perceptions, preceptions, and judgments, even though we may not think they're judgments about the world, how it works or how it should work. And what I was curious about is how effective is it to scramble people in a semester to have them come away going, hang on, my, let's say, predominantly American view of the world is just one view of the world. It's an accelerated, I suspect it's an accelerated way to get people to see that there are multiple perspectives, which is an advanced leadership maturity skill. And the fact that curiosity is the gateway to that. You can't develop multi-perspectives without curiosity. Do you find that as a result of them testing and retesting their mental models, have you also measured and have you seen a change in a sense of compassion and connection with those that they had hitherto considered other, as in non-American, and other in all sorts of different ways?
Yeah, we don't measure that directly, just so you know. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
going to claim that we assess that as a direct measure or with a scale item. So I would only be able to speak to this as a sense of, again, talking to so many different alums and hearing their stories. Some that I've talked to will frame it around, I didn't realize my privilege.
Okay.
So that's one way to
Yep.
frame it,
Yep.
and how that motivated them in the rest of their life to be successful in their own world, but also then to be generous otherwise, right? So there's one, just realizing my privilege. There's another way to look at that, and that is going back to the curiosity that uh, be careful with my assumptions.
Okay.
Um, and I've heard that re maybe not in those terms, right? Everybody has their own way to articulate that. But there's just a sense of care with assuming the other is like me.
Hmm.
There's perhaps a willingness to be patient and pause to listen. That's not true for everybody who's taken our program.
Sure.
But I think you can certainly be confident that a vast majority of those come off the voyage with a willingness to be a bit uncertain and to be a bit more curious than they were.
I agree. And certainly in my own personal experience, as well as my leadership training experience, when we expose people to diverse perspectives, experiences, one of the programs I used to run at the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation was called the Australian Rural Leadership Program. And part of that program when I was there is we'd take people overseas. And for a number of years, we went to India. I love India. And it is such a major contrast in so many different ways to Australia in terms of lifestyle and color and uh, noise and food and cultural practices. You name it. It is a jumble of difference. And it's jarring for many who hadn't been to the country before, or hadn't been overseas before, to see how other humans organize themselves into community and just day-to-day living. And that can radically transform people's points of view about what is the planet. And I love the fact that you guys are measuring what's your change of perception on community and your change of perception on planet, and then your own self-awareness around that. Not everybody can afford to take a semester, go on a boat, and have their life and perspective transformed. I'm interested from a leadership point of view now of speaking to the listeners of this show who are CEOs of small to medium enterprises, hands-on executives who are like, that's nice. I don't have 33 grand to drop on anybody. How do I get my team members to develop the same similar breakthroughs in terms of awareness and sensitivity? You're an educator. What's your point of view on this?
So we do, I just want to make sure the framing is appropriate for your audience.
Okay.
We are a nonprofit that runs like a business,
Yep.
right?
Well,
US
every
terms.
nonprofit should run like a business.
Yes. Some are grant funded, foundation funded. We are predominantly tuition based, like we are revenue based. We
Yeah.
are market facing. And the other 10% of our revenue is philanthropy. So we really do depend on how we address our market, how we serve our market, right? Fundamentally. So
Mhm.
we're nonprofit that runs like a business. And so I just want to make sure that your audience, who may be small and medium-sized businesses, know that even though we're a nonprofit, I think what I share is very relevant to them. So not all of our employees have gone on semester at sea. Most of them have studied abroad in some way. So this idea of intercultural competence or understanding the other, um, it's very, very, let's be honest, it is very difficult to achieve in the workaday environment.
Mhm.
You're sitting at your desk, you're doing a job. because although at times the work might be hard and it might be stressful and you might feel uncomfortable, you're not necessarily being forced to address these big questions. Maybe if you're working in a diverse workforce with a large organization, maybe, maybe, uh, but I would encourage them to work with someone like you and design a program that takes them to Mumbai for a week.
Mm.
I would encourage them, okay, I can't send them all away on semester C, but I can work with Zoe to get them into a zone of discomfort. Only in that zone of discomfort can we shake them and hopefully get their mind starting to work on this issue of what is other, what is difference, even when our foundation is genetically the same. What does that really mean? And how do I start? And 1 week won't do it, but it will shake them enough to start that process.
Getting people to be uncomfortable and curious works fine when they're not stressed out of their brains. I find that if people are overworked and stressed, being willing to, be calm and be curious and open to having your mental models jiggled is it's an effort to get there. I suspect. So as leaders who are interested in developing intercultural sensitivity and intercultural awareness, sometimes we need to look at the baseline management of the individuals to make sure that they're not overworked and stressed out. It would be great to take people and shake them up and travel around the world and, get them out of their comfort zones in that particular way. How else could we help workplaces be more sensitive and more globally aware?
Oh, I don't want to overstate this. I just think we have to be cautious about investing in workshops that are within the workplace, that are conducted by people who look like us, or maybe look a little bit different, but maybe their accent's the same, and they're there for a day, and that's going to be sufficient.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people, this will move them a bit of a distance. But if we're asking people to be consistently conscious of difference, to consistently take care of the assumptions that they make and pay attention to them, then I think we do have to place them in a zone of discomfort, not a place of high stress, not a place of a lack of safety. But I think when we're, what's going to cause these hormones to go and jar our system so that we are attending to these differences, we're incorporating them, we're allowing our synapses to connect in different ways. I think we can start with workshops. I think we can start with learning courses, but I think we also have to be honest with ourselves that that's going to be an investment that is the very beginning of this work. I totally agree with you that it's an investment that getting everybody on a ship for 3.5 months, particularly if they're employees, is impossible. But getting people into those zones, experiential ed. I mean, you're a big believer in experiential ed. Get them out of their workstation, get them into a different environment where they're going to be challenged in some meaningful way, at least as a start.
I love this, consistently conscious of difference. I think it's a practice and a discipline as opposed to a one-off workshop. And I think there's been a lot of criticism of late of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs as being too tokenistic, defaulting or assuming that a one-day workshop is going to fix the issue of acceptance, tolerance, understanding, compassion, connection. And I think I agree with you there, is that we can't just assume that because we give a lecture on diversity and diverse perspectives that people are going to be radically different. And creating a culture of curiosity, of leaning into having our mental models challenged, becomes part of the leadership practice. And you need to bring it to the table, to your group meetings, where you have a practice of interrogating your assumptions, whether it's about difference or whether it's about your strategy, say, for example, and asking the meta questions of what are the mental models we're using to address this issue or to solve this problem. So these are advanced leadership maturity strategies, which are quite different to, okay, we need to hit our targets for next quarter. What are some plans for that? It's really changing the concept of what leadership is and how we ought to run our teams. What have you noticed in the work that you've done? Is there a groundswell towards that, or is there just more of a leading edge, small front towards that?
Well, certainly the DEI work has ebbs and flows within the US. I can't speak to Australia, and right now, of course, it's under some threat by the new administration. But fundamentally, our organization continues to be committed to it, and we see it as the long arc of work, not as a singular moment, not as a single or two workshops or what have you. That I am not the oldest at this organization, but I am certainly one of the older people, and I confess often this is part of my journey. This is part of my work. And if they see that I'm committed to that journey and that I will be on it for as long as I'm here, as long as I'm taking breaths on planet Earth, I'll be on that journey. Then the rest, everybody sees that that's what they can be on too. That an organization can't stop being committed to embracing each human for who they are, makes you a better place. Makes you, and then you can go to business metrics. You're going to retain people better. You're going to attract people of greater talent and diverse perspectives. You're going to retain them better. And then you're going to get those numbers better. But it's the long arc. Anybody who thinks that they just pull someone in and says, okay, we're now going to make sure everybody can understand diverse perspectives at the end of the day. Well, no. This is a journey.
It is a journey. So I love that you talk about embracing each human for who they are. And in terms of your personal leadership journey towards that, what do you see as, what is the calling for you? You've been involved with Semester at Sea for a long time. I mean, it's a fantastic, exciting opportunity that opens people's eyes. At the end of that, if you have more and more people going through this program, what's the world that you're picturing that we are sailing towards? Just to use the sailing metaphor.
I love it. Sailing. Where are we sailing? So let me start with my journey and then how it connects to this journey, right? My journey in this world of understanding diverse perspectives really started back when I studied abroad, undergrad in Japan. You know, this person, this white male who's about 2 meters tall, spent 3 months in Japan. Barely spoke the language. Like, wow, synapses firing. This is different. Then I returned and I lived in Japan for a year teaching English, and then got to travel to multiple countries afterwards. And this became my passion, was connecting across cultures. My PhD was in trust across cultures. So I led study abroad programs when I was a professor. It just became almost like part of my DNA that this is what I want to be involved in. So that's part of the story. And then when we talk about this work around lifting up all humans and understanding all humans, back in 2008, the employer at the time had the leaders get involved and take the cognitive bias or inherent bias through Harvard. Go on, choose which 5 you want to do and do them. So I did them. And of course, we didn't have to share our results, but we were asked to go do five of these. And I was like, oh man, those results were hard. You know, time to look in the mirror. Let's reflect on this.
So what kind of results did they give you? Like these are, you have biases about these particular types of people or practices that you didn't know that you had
People.
about
So
people.
it had to do with race, ethnicity,
Okay.
um, physical size, accents, all that, and you can go on and find it. It's still available.
Mm.
Well, Harvard's maybe not publicizing anymore. I'm not sure. Let's hope they stay the course. But it was just another awakening for me, thinking, gosh, so long ago, I went to Japan and I was so impacted and thought I was really aware and thoughtful around any kind of biases I may have, cognitive biases, and this was another awakening for me, like 2008. And fast forward to my semester at sea voyage myself, I was a faculty member. Spring of 2017, I got the great privilege of being on the ship, going on this voyage, and there was this one deeply impactful moment for me. There was a small group of African American women who sort of clustered together and traveled in country together. One of them was in one of my classes, got to know her really well. She was a great student. And one night I was walking down the hall and saw them all sitting together. And we were about 4 days away from going to India, speaking of India. And I just asked them what they were doing. And they said, well, we're trying to prepare for India because it's very racist. And I didn't know how to respond. I was like, except to just listen, right? Which I think was good. I just wish at that time I had more perspective on this. Like, well, of course they're trying to figure out how to navigate this country that has a deep history of racism. And so that was wow. And then the next country after that was South Africa, obviously post-apartheid, but still deeply racist. And so you get those two together, and you got to start to reflect and think about this, and carry that back to the U.S. and really understand the history of racism in the United States. And so
So
it's
just,
a
I'm curious about that, Scott, that incident where you came across the young women. They're saying, we're trying to prepare for India. It's racist. What was the shocking part about it? The fact that they thought India was racist, or the fact that they felt like they needed to prepare?
the maybe I should reframe it. It was one of those moments where I'd wish I had a sense of what they might have been preparing for, like how they were thinking about this country. Because of course, if I was like, oh, we get to go to India, terrific. This is a tall white male.
Mm. Yeah.
These six women were thinking about India very differently than I was.
As
And I
in, are
wish,
we going to be targets there?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we can be treated fairly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So maybe it was just another awakening along this journey that I described I will
Mm.
always be on.
Mm.
And I think it's just super healthy that we're honest with ourselves that this is a constant journey. So as an organization and the staff members within that organization, you're going to be on that journey. Each staff member from my age, the ones who are 30 years younger than me, they're on their journey. And we are on that as an organization as well. We just have to remain committed to it, regardless of political, economic, whatever the public narrative is. We are committed to that work and know that it just continues.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's two-pronged, right? There's the white privileged people who are across many cultures and nations, the ones who have privilege, wealth, access. And then there are those who are not that, who have to see how they can navigate those power differentials. So it's multi-pronged approach, I guess, around that. It's not just showcasing your own sense of privilege and assumptions. It's also about helping others navigate the reality of these interactions, these other prejudices that they have to navigate every day. And how can we break that down? A third component, and I'm curious about what you think about this, is how do we change systems that embed these biases? Is there any work that you do around that or have thought about around that?
Oh, for sure. And when we talked about the price point, this is not a cheap program.
Mm.
And we need to make sure that there's access regardless of household income. I mean, that household income is the basis on which financial aid is determined within the U.S. higher ed system.
Yeah.
And so when people apply to our voids, they also provide through the FAFSA, federal aid, financial aid, student federal form, or whatever it's called. That gives evidence of their estimated family contribution and the need for financial aid. So we have that insight, and we want to be sure that we can make our program affordable for people regardless of household income. So that's one component.
Mm.
Because we also want to be very careful saying, well, everybody in this racial or ethnic category is not going to have wealth, because that's not true either.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, there's poor white people and there's rich Black people,
Mm-hmm.
but the system obviously has made it the opposite in majority, right? So we have to address that. But second, within these different underrepresented groups, there's messaging nuances that matter. They want to hear the story differently. They want to know about safety. They want to know about the connection to family and community. Like, we have to be thoughtful around who we're communicating to. In some cases, you'll find that you're just messaging directly with the student who's maybe a sophomore in college, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. They take it to their department chair or their faculty member or their parents, and they figure out. But in other racial and ethnic groups, it matters that you're framing this for the family.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of wealth, so you have to be really thoughtful around how you approach in that sense. So we really try. It's not easy. I mean, in terms of marketing and message, you got to keep it relatively simple. And you have to meet multiple market segments. And we actually have multiple constituents we're communicating to: the college student, their parents, higher ed institutions, our board, our alumni. So how do you keep that messaging as crisp and clear as possible, but also try to engage these different segments of the population?
Thank you for sharing that, Scott. I really appreciate that. And it's great that the organization is conscious of that. And, with 500 plus students a semester, that's a huge amount of stakeholders to be mindful of. Now, are you ready for the fast three?
I am.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Question number one, which I can't remember. Here we go. What is the future technology you most want right now?
This one is super easy for me. It is carbon-free or carbon-low fuel for cruise ships.
Yeah. Because what is it, mostly diesel?
Yeah, it's usually diesel and with a pretty heavy carbon impact. And there's ways to mitigate it a bit, but there's not much available yet. And there's, fortunately, very similar requirements to reduce it, but it's a long road and it's a technical challenge. To scale it is hard.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one. I hadn't thought about cruise ships and carbon costing on that. All right, number two, what's the best tip for leadership you ever got?
Yeah, I would say ever got is hard because my memory, but I would say over the last year, I've been working with a leadership coach, and what he's done really well with me, he's done many things well, but one thing is pay attention to your assumptions. It goes to much of what we discussed today, but when we're working with multiple constituents, so I have a leadership team, there's a staff here, there's the board, there's our alumni, there's all of this. He just keeps reminding me, pay attention to your assumptions. And that is a beautiful, concise, powerful way to make ourselves really consider how we're showing up and how we're reflecting on how we showed up. Pay attention to your.
Yeah, that's an integral one, and that will serve all of us really well. That one, that's really good. Number three, what are you reading or listening to right now?
So I'm reading a book. I love learning about neuroscience. I don't know that much about it, but I've really been reading a lot about it. And the most recent book I picked up is called Social. I wrote the author's name down, Matthew Lieberman.
Okay.
Um, and rather than do neuroscience focusing on the singular human brain and how it works and sort of dopamine and all, what he's really looking at is how our brains are wired to be socially connected, how we are wired to be, if you look at the evolution, it's not about one person next to another person, it's about two people together or three or five or, and it's fascinating to me to take that lens to it. I am very eclectic in what I listen to. I've listened to your podcast. I have many, many leadership podcasts I listen to. Um, but I'm starting to get into more fiction podcasts because they're on the weekends. They're just kind of a release.
Hmm. A fiction podcast.
Um,
So is that like, are those narrated audiobooks, or tell me a little bit more about a fiction podcast?
what I have enjoyed most recently quite a lot, there's one, I'm not sure if it's available globally, but it's called the Moth Radio Hour. And it's a
Okay.
series of storytellers. They've
Okay.
done it over, and I know that the Moth Radio Hour, and usually each episode might have four, maybe five storytellers, and they tell these, it's part of this whole storytelling culture, and they sort of have qualified to be part of the Moth storytelling festivals, and so they've recorded them and they put them in sequence in sort of a theme for that episode, and they're just really fun. Uh, and many of them are deeply human, and some of them have tragedy, and some have humor, and yeah, the Moth Radio Hour,
Thank you for
super
that
fun.
tip. I will
Yeah,
check that one out.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Scott. That was the fast three. Now, is
Glad
there
I
any?
was prepared.
Yep, you did a great job. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd love to share with the audience?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I would encourage people to get out of their comfort zone. Uh, I'd encourage them to go to the Semester at Sea website, think about this as an opportunity for themselves or their college students. I really, again, my bias is apparent. I work here. I left higher ed to join this organization. I believe in the power of the experience. Um, and I do run an episode, podcast myself called As Unexpected. The reason I run that podcast is because I believe leadership is tested when things don't go as planned or as expected. And
That's for
if that,
sure.
yeah, so if that's of interest to you or any of your listeners, maybe check it out. As Unexpected.
Awesome. And where can people find out more about you and your podcast?
Yeah, so semesterc.org about my organization and program. LinkedIn is my only social media. Scott Marshall. There's a lot of those out there, so you probably want to add something around location, program, position to find me, but please send me a LinkedIn connection. And then asunexpected.com, asunexpected.com.
Perfect. That's great. Scott, this has been terrific. Thank you so much. And what an amazing program that you're running and being involved with. I wish I'd known about it when I was at uni. It sounds like a fabulous life experience. So thank you for you and all the work that you do.
Thank you for the time, Zoe. I really appreciate it.
And Scott mentioned that there are actually lifelong learners, as in older folks, who can go on the semester at sea or even a month-long piece without having to take any uni courses. So could you just please re-explain all that exciting opportunity that you just told me about?
Yes, of course. So along with the college students, we have our lifelong learners. They generally are people taking sabbatical or leave or retired. They come by themselves, they come with a partner, they come with their families, and they can audit college courses. They get to choose a course or two. They get to go to the evening seminars, generally presented by our faculty and staff. They get to have a lunchtime lifelong learner meeting all the time they're on the ship. That would be a special session just for that cohort. And as you mentioned, you can go on the fall voyage, you can do a spotlight voyage, which is a month long, or you can do the full voyage, which is 3.5 months. For spring voyage, you do the full voyage. And I can tell you, these lifelong learners are phenomenal because they didn't want to do a standard cruise, right? They didn't want to do another trip to Tuscany or to Canberra. What they wanted to do was something truly unique, truly focused on learning, engaging with the younger generation and each other. And repeatedly, this is just a powerful part of the program, creates this multi-generational community, which is quite unique in today's world. It's just a lovely part of what we do.
Thank you. That was very exciting. I'm glad you shared that because I'm sure there's people who are listening who went, ping, it's never too late and I'm never too old. So that's fabulous. Thank you again so much, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being willing to record that.
Read to Lead. This fabulous book, it's called Culture Map by Erin Meyer. And the subtitle is Breaking Through the Invisible Boundaries of Global Business. I love this book when I read it. I found it completely eye-opening about how different cultures exist and that they exist on different spectrums in terms of if they're open or closed, if they're expressive or nuanced. And this kind of research delineating the different types of cultures that we exist in had a huge impact on me. It made me rethink about how cultures evolve and how we communicate and where our communication can often miss each other. So I highly recommend The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. That's it for the show this week. I really do hope you enjoyed it. It's a great pleasure bringing the show to you every week. If you do like it, subscribe, hit the button in your player, sign up to be a podcast insider where you get tip sheets and you get additional little factoid sheet notes that you can share with others. Even has discussion questions that can help you lead conversations with your team. So you can take the content from your listening and take advantage of it and leverage it with your team. And that way you can have a free leadership course by just using the resources available to you. You can sign up with the link that's in your show notes or go to my website, zoerouth.com, click on podcast and sign up there. I would love to have you as a podcast insider. What else? Oh, yes. Live with grace, lead in service, live well, lead well. We'll see you next week.